All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful science-backed tools we have for shaping behavior: reinforcement. Seriously, whether you're trying to build a new habit for yourself or teach someone a new skill, getting a handle on how reinforcement really works is a total game changer. So let's dive in. So here's the big question, right? How can you reliably, and I mean reliably, encourage a positive behavior in any person? It seems so simple on the surface, just offer a reward. But as we're about to find out, the science behind it is way more nuanced and, frankly, a lot more fascinating than that.
Here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the basics. What even is reinforcement? Then we'll get super practical with 4 keys to make it work, using the cool acronym DISC. After that, we'll get into the critical role of timing and schedules, and look at some amazing research on helping people make better choices. And then, of course, we'll tie it all together.
Okay, first things first. Before we can really use this tool, we've got to agree on what it is. So, what exactly do behavioral scientists mean when they talk about reinforcement? Here we go. Reinforcement isn't just something you give someone, it's a whole process. It's any consequence, anything that happens after a behavior that makes that behavior more likely to happen again. And the key word here is increases. If the behavior doesn't increase, well, then it wasn't reinforcement. It's all about the effect, plain and simple. And this right here is a super common point of confusion: the difference between a reinforcer and a reward. A reward is just something nice we give, a compliment, a cookie. But a reinforcer is defined only by its function. Does it work? Does it actually make the behavior happen more often? You can hand out rewards all day long, but if they don't change behavior, they aren't reinforcers. The crucial thing to remember is this: it's not what you think is rewarding, it's what the individual's behavior shows is reinforcing. Okay, so now that we have the what, let's really get into the how. We've got this fantastic, easy-to-remember acronym for using reinforcement effectively: DISC. Let's break down each part. First up, D is for deprivation. Now, that word might sound a little intense, but the concept is actually really simple. For something to be super motivating, a person can't just have free access to it all the time. Think about it. If you're trying to use screen time as a reinforcer, but that person can get on their tablet whenever they want, why would they work for it? The idea is to set aside specific, high-value things so they're only available as reinforcement. That's what gives them their power.
Next, I is for immediacy. And man, this one is absolutely critical. The reinforcer needs to show up almost instantly after the behavior. We're talking like within 3 seconds. If you wait too long, you might accidentally reinforce whatever else happened in that time gap. A great little trick here is to use immediate praise, like a quick, "Yes, that's it," that acts as a bridge, marking the exact right moment and buying you a few seconds to get the actual reinforcer ready.
S stands for size. You can think of this as a kind of cost-benefit analysis. The size of the reinforcer has to be worth the effort. I mean, if you ask someone to do a really tough task and you offer a single crumb of a cookie, that's just frustrating, right? It kills motivation. But on the flip side, if you give this massive reward for a tiny, easy task, the person might get full or satiated really fast, and then the reinforcer just loses its punch. It's a real balancing act. And finally, C is for contingency. This just means the reinforcer is delivered if and only if the desired behavior happens. If you start giving it out inconsistently, sometimes for trying, sometimes for succeeding, sometimes for no reason at all, it just creates a lot of confusion. The person can't figure out which specific action is the one that pays out. That link has to be crystal clear. So, we've covered the what and the how. Now let's dig into the rhythm of reinforcement. It's not just what you deliver, but when you deliver it. And the schedule you use, it can dramatically change how persistent a behavior becomes. This table lays out the 4 basic schedules, and they're really key to understanding this whole thing. Let's look at the 2 predictable ones first. With a fixed ratio schedule, reinforcement comes after a set number of times someone does something. Think of getting paid for every 5 boxes you pack. It makes you work fast, but you might take a little breather after each payout. Then there's fixed interval. That's reinforcement after a set amount of time. Your weekly paycheck is a perfect example. Behavior tends to pick up right before you know the reward is coming. Now, the other 2 are unpredictable, and that's where things get really powerful. So, which schedule is the most powerful? It's the variable ones, especially variable ratio. And they're so powerful because they're completely unpredictable.
This is the exact principle that makes slot machines so addictive. It's why you keep refreshing your social media feed. You never know if the next pull of the lever or the next refresh is going to be the one that pays off, so you just keep doing it. That unpredictability builds an incredibly strong, steady behavior that is really, really hard to quit. Okay, now we're going to zoom in on a really fascinating real-world problem. What happens when you're dealing with a challenging behavior that you just can't ignore? What if you literally can't stop it from being reinforced? A 2010 study by Athens and Vollmer tackled this exact problem. This is the huge question the researchers were asking. In a lot of real-life situations, you can't just ignore a problem behavior until it goes away. That's a process called extinction, where you cut off the reinforcement. But sometimes that's just not practical or even safe. So if the good behavior and the problem behavior are both getting some kind of reinforcement, how in the world do you tip the scales? So in their first experiment, they messed with duration. Check this out. When the appropriate positive behavior earned someone 45 seconds with a reinforcer, but the problem behavior only got them 5 seconds, what do you think happened? Exactly. The choice shifted. The person started doing the right thing more often because, well, it had a much better payoff. It just lasted longer. Next, they tried playing with quality. The appropriate behavior led to getting 3 things the person really, really liked. The problem behavior, it only led to 1 thing they didn't really care about. And again, the result was a no-brainer. People are smart, you know? They're gonna gravitate toward the option that gives them the better stuff. And finally, they manipulated delay. If the good behavior led to a reinforcer immediately, but the problem behavior meant you had to wait a full minute, the choice became obvious. Behavior shifted like crazy toward the immediate option. It just goes to show how powerful immediacy is in all our decision-making. But here's the real kicker. The big takeaway from the study is this. While each one of those tricks worked on its own, the researchers saw the biggest and most reliable changes when they combined them. So when the appropriate behavior resulted in a longer, higher quality, and more immediate reinforcer, the choice was overwhelmingly clear. This isn't just a theory. It's a practical guide for making the better choice the easier choice. Whew, okay, we have covered a lot of ground, from the absolute basics all the way to some really elegant scientific studies. So how do we boil this all down into a strategy that you can actually use? It really comes down to these 3 steps. First, you have to be a detective and figure out what is actually reinforcing for that specific person, not what you just assume they like. Second, put the DISC principles into action. Make sure you've got deprivation, immediacy, the right size, and strict contingency. And third, if you're competing with a problem behavior, don't just try to match its reinforcement. Stack the deck. Make the desired behavior the obviously better deal by making its payoff longer, better, and faster. So, at the end of the day, this isn't about bribery or just trying to control people. It's about understanding the hidden architecture of choice that's all around us. And that leaves us with a final question. Now that you have this new lens, where do you see these principles at work? Is it in the design of your favorite video game, your company's bonus system, maybe even in your own struggle to build a new habit? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you realize that effective reinforcement isn't about forcing a behavior. It's about engineering the world so that the right choice becomes the most rewarding one.